I have only read his books, and Ritvik sent it to me, like 18 Days of the War and the last moments of Bhagwan Krishna. That is because they are translated. But he had also written a book on the dating of Mahabharata. How many of you know that? Now we are discussing that afternoon. The whole afternoon I spent with Narayanacharya. He just goes like grilling me, essentially. He says, tell me this verse. How do you interpret this? This is from Mahabharata. And how about this? What about Bhishma on the bed of arrows? So you are saying 58 is not correct. Why do you say so? And we just go through it. And then same thing came here the next day or a day after. We had a function here, or I mean here meaning in the auditorium. And even when the function is over and I was running to the airport, he was 83 years old about that time and on a wheelchair, especially while traveling. So when he comes out, he just stops me. I'm running to the airport. He says, I have quick questions. You also say Rama's age at the time he left for Vanvas is 17. But aren't there references in Valmiki Ramayana that it is says 25? And he quotes the verses for 25. And this was something fun. I mean, few people were watching. And I quote for the 17. And he said, yes, but they both are in Valmiki Ramayana. Why did you choose 17? And I just gave us some simple examples, specific example. Again, I'll not go into the details. And his face goes like a child in a candy store. He says, I get it.
Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya was a master in this art, which is quite evident to those who are fortunate to experience his genius through his writings. Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya's rich knowledge and ability to cross-reference many works in his writing is a testament to the breadth and the depth of his knowledge. In a span of 3 pages, he goes from Jarasandha's birth to God's imagination to the current societal framework where people are doing certain worships to conversion. So I don't think anybody other than a genius can do such a vast expanse of things.
I'm going to talk about my interaction with Professor K.S. Narayanacharya. The linchpin that connects me with Professor Narayanacharya is sitting right on the podium. That is Ritvik Subramanya. I met him about 7 years ago. That is Narayanacharya. I came to know about him about 7 years ago. Actually, I met him in 2020. Right here in Bengaluru, maybe not the same auditorium. And just before that, I also had a personal meeting with him. But it is really Ritvik who introduced me to Professor K.S. Narayanacharya. I had published my 3 books in America as self-published books. And if you read them, they still exist. They don't have a foreword, for example. Because when I wrote my first book, and just imagine a plastic salesperson writing a book on Mahabharata and astronomy. So somebody said, oh, you need also a foreword. And I said, okay, who's supposed to write a foreword? And he said, someone that understands what you have written, someone who is an expert in that field, someone who can intelligently critique it, someone that you can respect, and someone preferably also agrees with you. This is 2011 and I couldn't find anyone around the world. So I said, I don't need a foreword. That happened the same thing with my second book, 2014, and same thing happened with my third book, 2018. And then comes Ritvik. He just wrote, I think a number of you heard that yesterday, he just wrote a Facebook post saying, sir, your books are too costly in India. Can I publish it? And he told yesterday the part that he remembers. I'll tell you a little bit that I remember. So I said, yes, you can. And still I don't know who he is. Then he said, he can correct me, of course. But he said, sir, what are your expectations? I said, take these books to every household, every Indian household. Take these books to every college library, university library, IITs, IIMs, etc. And he said, sir, consider it done. And since then, he has essentially taken this all over. Now, when he published the Indian version of that book, he said, you don't have a foreword to your book when you self-published. I said, these are the considerations someone told me. And he said, well, I know someone. And that was Professor K.S. Narayanacharya. So Professor Narayanacharya wrote a foreword to my first book, When Did the Mahabharata War Happen, when it was published in India. Again, it's out there, and if you want to read, even if you don't want to read my book, that's perfectly fine. But do read the foreword. And then for the Ramayana, I'll come to that at the end of my speech. But then fast forward to 2020. It's a magical number, by the way. 2nd February 2020. You see the magic in it? 22202022. And so just 2 days before that, he again put me on the back of his scooty or whatever it was. And I don't know where I'm going. So I say, where are we going? He says, we are going. And we go to meet Professor Narayanacharya. And Ganesh V mentioned like how Narayanacharya was critical. Aurobindo was his inspiration, but he's also critical of Aurobindo. And well, that's how a researcher needs to be. That's how a person needs to be. Critical and criticism and critique. Sometimes people confuse those things. Okay, we have to separate the grains from the chaff. That's what Brahma Bindu Upanishad also tells me. As soon as we entered, so there were few people sitting there discussing with Narayanacharya. I also wanted to join this. He says, no, come here. And he made me sit where he was sitting, the bed or the desk that we had. And there was no time wasted, no time spent on formalities. They immediately said, I have a question for you. I have one question for you. And I'm saying, no, what is going to be the question? And I don't know if I'm going to have an answer. He said, what do you think of Bhairappa's Parva? Now, I'm not going to spend time telling you what I told him about what I think of Bhairappa's Parva. But whatever I said, immediately he held my hand and he said, you and me are on the same page. We agree. And then we went on through his different library, different rooms. And he was instructing Ritvik something in Kannada every time. And I'm just trying to figure out what that means. And then very interestingly, the number of you who have visited his place, you would know he had 3 desks. One desk where he would sit down and write things in English. In another room, another desk, he would write things in Kannada. And a third desk, Tamil, correct?
Current affairs.
Current affairs. So there was a third desk, then he would sit and write things in that. And of course, those of you who have seen it, those books are open, he is writing, and he would not put a pen to the paper unless the entire statement is clear in his mind. There are no words that he has scratched at all. That's how it is. And then he was telling Ritvik something, and what I understood, because I would look at him, and he said, Ritvik would tell me, go sit in that chair. So I sit in that chair, then I go to the next room again. So whatever that Narayanacharya thought at the time, he wanted me to sit in all 3 chairs in the 3 rooms at that time. What is interesting is that day also, of course, he had understood my Mahabharata work, and therefore he had written the foreword. But number of you may know, and I have not read it because my limitation is the language. I have only read his books, and Ritvik sent it to me, like 18 Days of the War and the last moments of Bhagwan Krishna. That is because they are translated. But he had also written a book on the dating of Mahabharata. How many of you know that? Okay. And so there, like many others have done it, because connected with the traditional understanding of Kali Yuga. So therefore, he had connected that with, like many traditionalists have done, 3102 BC. Now, it takes a great courage where you put a pen to the paper, you establish a thesis, and then you see something better and you deviate yourself from it. If you have heard the name of Ken Robinson, if you have not, you can go to TED Talks and type TED Talks Ken Robinson, educator. He says it's not necessary that you have to be wrong to do something revolutionary or be a revolutionary. But unless you are willing to be wrong, you cannot do anything revolutionary in life. And that was Professor K.S. Narayanacharya. I also had another guru, Dr. P.V. Vartak. And his story was same. In fact, you should start thinking. He had published a book showing the date of Mahabharata to be 5561 BCE. That's more than 7,500 years ago, as early as 1980. And then I essentially come up to the same date in 2011. Okay, so now you should start wondering, how many of you understand Marathi, or Konkani people will possibly understand? Maybe you can translate afterwards. So you should actually ask, so if Vartak had figured this out in 1980 and I figured out the same thing in 2011, in Marathi people would ask me, or actually they do ask, so Nilesh, मग तुम्ही काय दिवे लावलेत? Okay, so what exactly did you do? And then you have to read it. But fast forward to Narayanacharya and also Dr. Vartak. Then Dr. Vartak has also done work on the Ramayana. So it's 2012. I go to meet Dr. Vartak in Pune. And so after this discussion on Mahabharata, I tell him, Dr. Vartak, I have figured out the date of Mahabharata, sorry, date of Ramayana. And he said, please tell me, because he had also proposed 7,300 BCE. And I tell him, mine is very different than his. So he says, please tell me. So I tell 12,209 BC. You can see that book out there. And this was the same discussion flavor that I had with the case Narayanacharya. He says, tell me, how did you figure this out? I'll not waste your time in details. But I tell him a certain slope, and he goes like this. This is Dr. Vartak. And fast forward now to 2020. Now we are discussing that afternoon, the whole afternoon I spent with Narayanacharya. He just goes like grilling me, essentially. He says, tell me this verse. How do you interpret this? This is from Mahabharata. And how about this? What about Bhishma on the bed of arrows? So you are saying 58 is not correct. Why do you say so? And we just go through it. And then same thing came here the next day or a day after. We had a function here, or here meaning in the auditorium. And even when the function is over and I was running to the airport, he was 83 years old about that time and on a wheelchair, especially while traveling. So when he comes out, he just stops me. I'm running to the airport. He says, I have quick questions. You also say Rama's age at the time he left for Vanvas is 17. But aren't there references in Valmiki Ramayana that it is says 25? And he quotes the verses for 25. And this was something fun. Few people were watching. And I quote for the 17. And he said, yes, but they both are in Valmiki Ramayana. Why did you choose 17? And I just gave us some simple examples, specific example. Again, I'll not go into the details. And his face goes like a child in a candy store. He says, I get it. Now, I'll tell you, I read Bhagavad Gita and somebody said, now read Upanishad. I tried to read Upanishad and I was bored to death. Now, this is many years ago. But when you meet people like Narayanacharya, you start even understanding Upanishad. For example, Bhrutahari, in his, what is the book? He says, if you meet the great realized people, if you meet great people and their random talk is basically what defines the Shastra. Yas tesha swaira kathasta eva bhavanti shastrani. So when I met likes of Narayanacharya, I understood this. And just, I want to end on something and then to tell you something about the Ashirvachan that he gave to my second book, that is on the Ramayana. But in Brihad Aranyak Upanishad, there is a guideline for the people who are into sadhana and they become a siddha. But even when you are a siddha, as long as you are in the body, there are certain norms that you must follow. It goes something like this, Tasmat Brahmana. Brahmana in the sense of a jnani. He says, Tasmat Brahmana. So now the person who is a jnani, how he or she should behave. Pandityam nirvidya balyena tishtase. So one thing is to have the erudition, but can you digest it? Can you assimilate it and not wear a chip on the shoulder? And live like a child. Balyena tishtase. That was Narayanacharya. Now it goes further. It says you have to even digest this together. Pandityam cha balyam cha nirvidya atha muni. Amaunam cha maunam cha nirvidya atha brahmana. Then he is a true realized soul. If we have a time, we will show a small clip that he gave me as a Ashirvachan. Again, the linchpin is Ritwik. And my namaskaram to Narayanacharya. And also congratulations and greetings to the awardee, the Samman in the name of K.S. Narayanacharya. Namaskar.
Dear Nilesh Oak ji, I am very proud of your two books being published by my esteemed friend, Mr. Ritik Subramaniam. The books have come up well. And more, your incisive readings into the two great national epics have taken me by, what shall I say, surprise is too small a word. Your capacity to penetrate into astronomical details scattered over both Ramayana and Mahabharata have left me breathless almost. I am an avid reader and a discourser on these two epics. I have delivered thousands of lectures, no doubt, but from a different ethical, moral, spiritual angle. You have pinpointed the exact dates on which these events happen. For example, although I knew Dasharatha describes his horoscopical positions to Rama just before the exile. Having announced the coronation of Rama, Dasharatha calls his son back and says, Trishankuhu, Lohitangaha, our forefathers, they are not well placed in the zodiacal positions. Of course, I have read the commentary by Govind Raja, who is a master in astrology also. But your width combined with the Indian wisdom and the Western mode of approach to these things is something you have galloped extremely fast, leaving all other researchers far behind you. My great appreciations for your endeavor, and for a very, very long time, as you have said earlier, nobody will challenge you. If they challenge you, they have to be greater than you, which I doubt will never happen. May God bless you. May God bless you.
My namaskara to the holy feet of Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya, in whose perpetual presence we have assembled today. And namaskara to our distinguished speakers on the stage, all the scholars, educators, ladies and gentlemen. So, just to say what I'm going to talk about, there have been a lot of topics that have been discussed, but I just want to talk about how I find Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya. I never had the opportunity to meet him in person, but I think he's talking to me every day through his work. So this is just my personal reflection of how I find him. So in Sanatana Dharma, there's a famous phrase, when the student is ready, the Guru appears. Guru, who is the remover of ignorance, is the one who enables the student to tide over the ocean of ignorance and go towards this path of realization. Some are blessed to find their gurus in physical realm, whereas some of us not so blessed to find the gurus through the books who don the role of Manasika gurus. So I need to highlight that I'm just a bystander on the beach. Like when I look at Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya, I think he's like an ocean of knowledge, whose expanse I cannot even fathom or even try to grasp. So I'm just trying to take a fistful of water and try to make sense of what Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya stood for. I'm sure he's much more than what I'm going to speak today about. So K.S. Narayanacharya came into my life in the form of an unseen guru who gave me valuable lessons through his writings and books. When I was growing up, DVG was already shaping my thoughts and my philosophy through his Kagga, and S.L. Bhairappa sir was driving my societal mind, how the society is, how the society is evolving. But in the middle of this, one of my favorite topics, which is a constant dvandva in my mind, is this finer tenets of Dharma, especially related to Mahabharata. And this is where Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya came into my life. My encounter with Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya was quite accidental. I didn't really know who he was. I used to go to Sapna Book House to go and pick up some books when I was coming back from office, and on a whim, without any thought, I just went and bought this Veda Samskriti Parichaya 3-book combo pack. Though I'm guilty actually of not completing this magnum opus, but I compulsively refer to these books at times when certain questions crop up, either as a product of reflection when I'm thinking about some topics or a debate that happens, especially in social media. So amongst the profuse amount of work of this Acharya, I feel this book is not very widely spoken about. Even yesterday I was talking to Ritwikji that we need to get this in English at some point of time. This book actually, the book that really changed my understanding of Ityasa, and in general it gave me a very different perspective, is Adinantu Dinagalu, which we know better as Those Eating Days. I was actually very fortunate to proofread and read the latest revision, which was actually edited by Acharya himself. Mahabharata is a topic that holds immense and ever-growing appeal among Bharatiyas. Woven into many subplots and stories, it has something for everyone at every juncture of life. However, there are two parts of this epic that commands a lot of interest amongst the readers. One is the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which we all revere and worship. The other is the 18-day war. Those 18 days, for those of you who have not read it, is a masterpiece on the finer tenets of Dharma. And I cannot just stop appreciating and celebrating about the skill of the author to highlight the nuances of Dharma. Mahabharata War was a very gory one. There is no mistake about it, in which our entire Bharatavarsha's history changed forever. As Krishna says, this was essential to ensure that Dharma was re-established on this very holy land. However, when one starts to analyze the various events and personalities involved in the war, they are bounded with a lot of questions about the legality, about why one couldn't have been better though they were wronged. What was the reason for Dhristadyumna's action against Drona? Wasn't Drona his guru? Such questions are bound to come, especially in debates. And I think if somebody is following social media, I think you would see that there is this whole fight about Karna. Was he a hero? Was he a villain? Kind of a thing that keeps on. So one wishes to answer these or even contemplate on such questions. They need a guide who needs to make them understand the subtle nature of Dharma. Dharma is very subtle. Narayanacharya has blessed us with a work that provides very rich insights into this topic, and for this reason, I think this is one of his finest works written about Mahabharata. I mean, just not about his, across the spectrum of works on Mahabharata, this is definitely on the top tier. I would like to read out a small portion of that book, where at the end of the war, Balram and Krishna are actually having a debate, and I just want to highlight how K.S. Narayanacharya ji intertwined Dharma into a debate between two brothers. So Balrama says, this is a clear denouncement, let it be, but what shall we do now? Krishna, in his own just says, just go home to Dwarka, forget all this, enjoy ourselves in innocent activities and pleasures for the rest of our lives. Krishna is so casual, he's like, let's enjoy, don't worry about it. So, and then he makes a small rejoinder, unless you want to complicate it further by unwanted comments, taking sides. Then there is this whole debate about them that happens. And then Krishna listens to his brother and he says, you know, the science of political wisdom, but not its application or practice. There is this big debate that happens between Balrama and Krishna, where Balrama says, Duryodhana was my Shishya, Bhima has done an injustice by killing him. And then Krishna justifies that, telling that he has settled the score for the humanity. He goes on to elaborate that. In the interest of time, I wouldn't go into the details, but I just want to tell that there is one interesting phrase that I will come to at the end of this talk, where Krishna's words resound a lot in modern nature. The brilliance of the author, any author for that matter, and we have a lot of established authors here, lies in their ability to transport the reader to an era where the event is occurring, like giving a ringside view to the event as it is unraveling. So in this case, Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya was a master in this art, which is quite evident to those who are fortunate to experience his genius through his writings. Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya's rich knowledge and ability to cross-reference many works in his writing is a testament to the breadth and the depth of his knowledge. For example, there's another favorite book, which is The Last Moments of Krishna Avatara, Sri Krishna Avatara the Kone Galige Golu in Kannada, where there's an exchange between Draupadi and Krishna. So Krishna has been stuck with an arrow, his life force is ebbing away, and Draupadi appears before him, and there's a debate between both of them. And this is a very interesting one actually. Draupadi says, who is that God when they say that all Vedic mantras are pointing towards God? So there is this, you can see that there's a debate between a sister and a brother, but K.S. Narayanacharya tries to imbibe dharmic concepts and a debate about dharma, the nuances of dharma into this. And Krishna, in his own jest, says that, good, tell me why should color matter? He's worried about his name. Why am I called Krishna? So then there is a phrase that comes, great scholars who are not in the least bit fired by love or devotion lecture about Vedic verses and tear them to bits in usually attended gatherings. I want to throw away my baggage and engage in a wordplay with my sister and best friend. Is that an indulgence? Now this is where I really find K.S. Narayanacharya very, very interesting. Was he commenting about Krishna and Draupadi, or was he commenting about the modern day society? So there is another thing that I'm going to come back in a small while. So if we read this exchange, we can see that Krishna is actually prodding Draupadi to think. Reflection, which is a very, very important point of our thought process, our Indic way of learning, is something that Krishna is Though his life force is ebbing away, he's trying to teach his sister to think what is happening there. So, in the same book, when Draupadi is responding, the Acharya ji actually goes and puts a lot of cross references to Kathopanishad, Bhagavad Gita, and a lot of other literature. So, this is basically one of the examples that I'm trying to highlight where the breadth and the depth of his knowledge, that's why I said he's an ocean. His knowledge, I don't think anybody can comprehend actually. There's just a few specks of brilliance I've tried to highlight to showcase Acharyaji's knowledge and his grip on the subject. Acharyaji was going to be very straightforward. I'm sure people who are very fortunate to have met him will always vouch for that. So yesterday, in this talk, Professor M.S. Chaitra made a very interesting comment about Nataka and how when they did the Nataka in their village, the current affairs, I think including illicit affairs, if you can remember, made their way into this. So when he was speaking, I was making notes and I just reminded of Dr. K.S. Narayanacharya. In Veda Samskritya Parichaya, it's actually a 3-book volume where each book has got different topics like Nachiketa Vidya, Vasishtha Vishwamitra and about gods. But one of my favorite books is the 3rd book, which is on Mahavishnu, because I keep rereading about Mahavishnu because he's my favorite god. And in that, there is a section on Jarasandha, and this is where I just want to highlight across 3 pages, Acharyaji goes from one extreme to other extreme. So in Jarasandha, there is this from the Sabha Parva, and he says, it's in Kannada by the way, Nana hesaru Jare, Muppu endu, ಬೇಕಾದ ರೂಪ ಧರಿಸಬಲ್ಲ ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ರಾಕ್ಷಸಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರಿಗೆ ಪೂಜೆಗೊಳಿತ ಸುಖವಾಗಿದ್ದೇನು ಯಾರ ರಾಕ್ಷಸಿನ ಪೂಜೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರ ವಿಲ್ ಎನಿಬಡಿ ವರ್ಷಿಪ್ ಅ ಡೆಮನಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ರಿಯಲಿ ಇಂಟ್ರೀಗಿಂಗ್ ನಿನ್ನ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲೂ ದಿನ ವಾಸಿಸುತ್ತಾ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೇನೆ ಓಕೆ ಅಂಡ್ ದೆನ್ ಆಚಾರ್ಯಜಿ ಮೇಕ್ಸ್ ಅ ಕಮೆಂಟ್ ಹೇಗಿದೆ ದೇವರ ಕಲ್ಪನೆ ಸೊ this is a very interesting anecdote where he tries to do and then he goes on to comment. It's just 2 pages. I flipped 1 page here and he goes on to comment the reality of the society as we stand. ಬ್ರಾಹ್ಮಣರಾಗಿ ಹುಟ್ಟಿ ಪರಮ ಸಾತ್ವಿಕರಾಗಿರಬೇಕಾಗಿದ್ದು ಮುಸಲ್ಮಾನ ಫಕೀರರ ಸಮಾಧಿಗಳನ್ನು ಪೂಜಿಸುವವರು ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಲೇಖಕನೇ ಅನೇಕರನ್ನು ಕಣ್ಣಿಂದ ಕಂಡು ಬೆರಗಾಗಿದ್ದೇನೆ. I'm sure we all know what is he referring to, but the point is that he's trying to come and makes a comment. And in the next page, I'm just trying to speed up a little bit here. He goes and talks about conversion. In a span of 3 pages, he goes from Jarasandha's birth to God's imagination to the current societal framework where people are doing certain worships to conversion. So I don't think anybody other than a genius can do such a vast expanse of things. And beyond dharma aspects, K.S. Narayanacharya is an inspiration to many authors, prolific writer in Kannada and English. Sometimes when we do editing, Ritvik ji said I do editing, I actually find it's one of the most challenging jobs to edit Acharya's works because at times I have to refer to dictionary to really know what was he trying to say. Some of his words I can't make sense of at that point. Just last couple of points I want to make. Yesterday one of the speakers was making a point about Sri Aurobindo's huge influence on K.S. Narayanacharya. I'm sure everybody who knows him knows that. But I'm not sure if it is well known that Acharya ji was actually critical about Sri Aurobindo's methods in some of the things. So one of the books which I really hope makes its way to English at some point of time is Sri Mahabharata Patra Prapancha. In this, there is a phrase that I just want to read out. It is going to be probably the last one I'm going to refer. A phrase which was made by Aurobindo. An epic of the Mahabharata was written by the Krishna of the island called Vyasa, Dvaipayana, in 24,000 couplets or something more, less itinerant than 27,000 on the subject of the great civil war of Bharatas. And then he goes on, and Acharya ji makes a comment, ಆದರೆ ದುರ್ದೈವದಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ಅರವಿಂದರಂಥ ಮೇಧಾವಿಗಳು ತಪಸ್ವಿಗಳು ವಿಮರ್ಶಕರು ಈ ತಪ್ಪಿನ ಅರಿವಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಏನು ಹೇಳೋಣ. He doesn't really care or has any qualms about calling it out. And he is very straightforward. So in this book called Main Twist of Gita Thought, I just want to highlight one thing that where Acharya ji, that's one book I really, really want everyone to read. All excellence belongs to God. It is abundant and all around. You cannot miss if you are watchful and quick of sensibilities, but you cannot fathom its depth. It's very, very philosophical. It's a simple message, but so simply and succinctly described by K.S. Narayanacharya ji. Though we have been quoting about Mahabharata quite a bit, and I'm sure many more speakers will speak about it, I think it also needs to be highlighted that Acharya has written extensively on Ramayana also. There's a Ramayana Pratra Prapancha. There's also this Mula Samshakta Ramayana, which is something I really personally want to translate it to Urish. Just to conclude, and just to share my thoughts at the end of this, in the autobiography of Yogi, it's a very wonderful book, Sri Yukteswar Giri, who is the guru of Yogananda Paramahamsa, says, man has the natural privilege of roaming secretly amongst its thoughts. This couldn't be truer than the modern day where multiple distractions are available literally at one's hand. Various outlets crave for our attention, makes it quite easy for one's focus to waver. In these trying times, it becomes much more important than we make a conscious attempt in imbibing and connecting with our illustrious past. Again, in the same book, Paramahamsa Yogananda ji meets the great scientist Jagdish Chandra Bose, and I think this is some phrase that stuck with me for a long time. It is often forgotten that he who surrendered us with the ever-evolving mystery of creation has also implanted in us the great desire to question and understand. In this context, one might wonder what to read, where to read, and this is where I go back to those 18 days where there is a phrase from Krishna which is very, very prophetic and prolific. The wrongs of the history cannot be silently condemned into a few pages of cold academic study. They are sprouting capabilities. In fact, the seeds of the present lie in the past. Only by a right imagination of the future and right action can you control the past and alter your present. I certainly hope that many more people get to read Acharyaji's works, many more of his works. I'm sure Ritwikji will be more than interested in getting them out. I'm really thankful to the organizers, Udbhava Param Foundation, Subbu Books and Sahitya Prakashana for this opportunity to speak amongst you. Thank you so much. Namaskaram.